First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. Thanks for joining us. That is a live look there from our Shriners Cam overlooking Portland, and it's gotten a little bit cloudy.
Yes, it's cloudy today.
Which is certainly convenient for what we're going to be talking about today.
I might have planned it that way. I don't know.
I knew it. I knew you had that power. Hello, everyone. Again, as I said, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler here with Katie Zuniga. And as always, when we have Katie over here, we get to find out more stuff like extended forecasts and special shows like this, where this is something that we have brought up before, where I've asked you questions about clouds.
Yes.
Because my cloud knowledge is seriously lacking.
Yes.
I mean, I can name a few. But that's about it.
Yeah, we put out there some questions for folks, you know, what do you want to learn, what do you want to talk about that I can't do within regular forecast on, you know, Good Day Oregon.
Yeah.
And this was your topic, so I figured why not kick off the topic series with yours?
Yes, fantastic. Well, and we've got a lot to go through here. So as we mentioned, talking about clouds. And we've got, I don't know, quite a bit to go through. I mean, you let me know.
Okay. So one of the things that we talked about, Greg, you and I, was, you know, why are clouds flat on the bottom? So we're going to kind of build toward... Okay, we're going to build toward getting to that. But something super duper important that we need to talk about is orographic lift. Now, if you've never heard what orographic lift is, it's the process where winds force air upward on a mountain range, causing it to cool and potentially leading to precipitation. So here's just a little graphic for you showing, you know, we can pretend like that's Mount Hood right there, right? And that wind, that air that's full of the moisture is coming off the Pacific, right? So it's going to hit your mountain. It's going to be forced up. It's an kind of almost an unnatural lift upward. Well, you know, warm air rises, right? Everybody kind of hears that from elementary school. Well, orographic lift is that forced up into the atmosphere.
So it's just slamming into that mountain.
It slams into that mountain and goes up. Well, as air rises, it cools. And so that happens when the air cools is, for lack of a better term, it condenses. We know that. It can hold less. It's kind of a simple way of putting it because it's a little more... It's a little smaller air particles. I'm trying to say the right word.
Tough. Yeah, smaller air particles.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound as simple as it is because there's more to it. But what happens is when it condenses, then we start to see the possibility of precipitation with it when it all comes together because it can just, again, quote, hold less moisture.
That makes sense.
And then there you see where that flat cloud is right there. Again, we're going to build to that, but that's a big part of what we're talking about today. Then as that air goes over the mountain and as that cooler air passes over the mountain, then it starts to sink. And when air sinks, it warms. So that's the high pressure that we talk about, that sinking air. So one thing that's not on this graphic is everything that's on that, we're pretending this is Mount Hood, that's going to be the east side of the mountain. So that's called the rain shadow. So that's part of the main reason why it rains less in central Oregon on the other side of the mountains than it does on our side, leeward, and then the rain shadow side. So we see most of, if not all of the moisture kind of being squeezed out of the air and given to us. And then as it sinks, the air warms, it expands, it's dried out, and you do not get the rain on that side of the mountain. So therefore it dries as it falls and decreases, and so you get that warm, dry air. So that's your orographic lift. That's what we see across Mount Hood. I see your brain spinning. Are you thinking something?
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at that. You know, it definitely makes sense, but the air descending warms.
It warms as air drops, and that's the high pressure. It warms the molecules. You know, we have a less dense and more dense air. So what we're looking at is, I brought you a picture. I don't have it to put up on the thing, but I'll just show it to you, Greg, is right here. So cooler air is more dense and warmer air is less dense. So the cooler air, that's when we have like our low pressure and does that make sense there?
It does make sense.
Okay, so what we have from that, I'm gonna actually skip a graphic because this is a perfect place to show you this, because we see all kinds of pictures all the time about the lenticular clouds that form right there.
Solid name.
Over the mountains. So what do we see? Well, we see that, you know, moisture, that air is pushed up and over the mountain, it condenses into droplets and the clouds form. And then what happens? Well, it sinks down the other side, it drops, and then you see on the backside those droplets evaporate and the clouds dissipate. So you get those like pancakey, sort of dome-looking saucer clouds.
Looks like a UFO cloud, yeah.
It
basically.
does look
hanging
like
over the top of Mount Hood right there.
It does. It's pretty awesome, and they're so special. I love them. And we get them sometimes out at the coast, too, on some of those formations out there, but that's the most important one. Okay, pop quiz. Do you know who named our clouds? How they got their name?
At some point in my education, I did know that. I cannot tell you right now.
Well, I will be honest with you. I had to look it up to make sure I was saying.
Samuel Cumulus. No?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So we've talked about, clouds form when the temperature of the air reaches the condensation point. So that's when it goes up, it condenses, and that means the air is fully saturated, 100%. And that's, basically when the water vapor becomes liquid, it reaches that point, and then there's dust particles in the air. So have you heard kind of the controversy out there about cloud seeding?
Oh, yes, of course.
People are talking about, you're creating weather.
Right, controlling the weather.
Exactly. So the scientific fact behind it is there has to be moisture in the air. You can't create rain out of nothing. So sometimes you have everything you need in the air, but you don't have that dust particle for things to condense onto. You need some form of little speck of something in the air, whether it's from smoke, just dust, dirt, sand, whatever is in the air. You have to have that little particle, something for it. So what cloud seeding is just saying, okay, we already have the available moisture. Here's some type of, condensation nuclei is what they call it, that for it to actually form onto. Dust particles is most typical, and that's how it becomes visible to us. So it's there, you just can't see it because there's no dust. Okay, so we call the result of this clouds. When it's in the air, when it's on the surface, it's fog.
Right.
Now, if you are below the clouds and you drive up a mountain, you just got into the fog. So there's no difference. It's just a matter of, where you are, where it's at. Yep. So what's fog to you could be clouds to somebody else. So there are various factors that influence the exact point where the condensation occurs, such as air pressure and the given altitude, the moisture content of the air temperature, and in most cases, the air temperature is the most important factor. So that's what happens when you see like that nice flat cloud. Let's go to this. Let's go to that so we can
pull back up.
Yeah, pull that back up. Yep. Okay, so you see where those clouds look like they're flat on the bottoms there? Okay, so that is called the LCL, which stands for lifted condensation level. Okay, so that air over Portland Metro is rising as it cools. Once it reaches that 100% humidity at that parcel, at that level, it's fully saturated. It's called the lifting condensation level. So again, I'm not going to show this on air because it's too confusing. But right here, when you do your little math, the point at which it becomes 100% saturated is your LCL. So that would be visually here where everything is flat.
Okay.
So your LCL can be at different heights depending on all those factors I told you, air pressure, temperature. Yep, exactly. So the humidity in the air increases, so the height of the LCL decreases because it doesn't take as much for it to get saturated, right?
So it's really humid, there's going to be lower
It's going to be lower clouds, exactly. But, conversely, if it's drier conditions, then your LCL is going to be higher, and that means it's going to take longer for it to get fully saturated and up into the air.
Is that a way you can kind of tell, what the humidity is just by looking at something like that?
Well, there's other factors.
Find out a cheat code, basically. There's no
there's no cheat code. I am doing like the Cloud Basics 101 for you because we just don't have, these things I'm talking about could take like, a whole semester in college to get to. Yes. Okay, so here's where we have kind of the top, I want to say like 10, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, about 10. 10 most popular cloud types, okay? So back to my question to you about how clouds were named. So let's see, where's it? Luke Howard Okay, was his name.
Jeremiah Stratus?
Yeah, no Jeremiah Stratus, no Mr. Nimbus.
Okay.
So he was alive from 1773 to 1864. Okay, his father sent him to grammar school, but he was more interested in nature instead of like Greek and Latin classes. Okay, so he was a scientist by nature. So in his school years, the clouds were called essences, is what they called them before they were named clouds, because there were no names, there was no like classification or anything like that. And so he was really interested in like the nature and the behavior of the atmospheric gases, oxygen, nitrogen, and he decided to investigate it in Great Britain and Europe. So I'm reading this as a definition from the National Weather Service here. It says, in his school years, high-level dust from volcanic eruptions in Iceland and Japan caused brilliant sunrises and sunsets. To Howard's logical mind, clouds and complicated halos must be a result in the causative effects in the natural order. So he wanted to know more. At the age of 20, he returned to London to work as a pharmacist. As a hobby, he joined a group of scientists known as the natural philosophers, and each member in there read a scientific paper to others. Luke Howard's turn came one night during the winter of 1802-1803, and his paper was titled On the Modification of Clouds. In our current language, modification means classification. So this paper was well received, and that is what was published and has become the classic in the history and has become classic in the history of science. And today we still use the basic scheme to Howard's presentation that night in Latin names associated to clouds. So our cloud classification came back in the beginning of the 1800s, like very beginning. So there are 3 basic cloud types: heaps of separated cloud masses, layers of clouds that are much wider and then they are thick, and wispy curly clouds. So your heaps are the cumulus family, your layers are the stratus family, your layered heaps are the stratocumulus, altocumulus, and cirrocumulus, and then the precipitating clouds are the cumulus, nimbus, cirrus, and nimbus stratus.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to go through each of these a little and give you some fun information. Okay, are we getting close on time here? Okay, so we'll just do this real quickly. So the high-level clouds, cirrus, cumulus, and cirrus stratus, those ones are predominantly made of ice crystals. Some are a little more, some are exclusively, but those high-level clouds are pretty much all the ice crystals, and the cirrostratus is the one that makes the halos that you see around the sun. Okay,
Yes.
The mid-level clouds are the altocumulus, altostratus, and nimbostratus. So they're most commonly the mid-level clouds. They appear at different times of the day. Which one is it?
Are you getting a lot of rain from those ones?
Altostratus are the ones that give us the virga. So that's the rain that goes from the cloud but doesn't make it to the ground, and it kind of looks like little streaks.
Yeah.
So the nimbostratus, that's the result of the thickening altostratus, and that is the lowering cloud base builds as it rains, so it drops down. That's why it can be a lower level cloud too. And then the cumulus nimbus, that's one that's going up. That's your typical thunderstorm, hail, tornado.
Gotcha.
The cumulus, those are your fun like Toy Story clouds where you're like making animal creatures out. And then the stratus ones there in the low, those are the ones that give us those long gloomy days. They're just like a nice flat lower level cloud that you're just kind of like gray doom.
Yeah, this is gray.
Yeah.
Oregon. Would that be like, what are we looking at right there?
The stratus is generally a gray cloud layer with uniform base, which may, if thick enough, produce drizzle. So my thought on that one, without being able to see all the different layers, there's definitely mid-level clouds, and I'm thinking we're looking at, what was that middle one? Altostratus? Go back to my little thing there. Yeah, so between the altocumulus, because those ones can be on multiple layers.
Okay,
so I think
altocumulus.
Altocumulus would be my, somewhere in there, because they're mid-level clouds for sure.
All right.
But they're not going to give us any rain today. So mid-level, flat, there you go.
There's no rain? Okay.
No, not today.
That's good.
Not today.
I left the top off of my Jeep. So.
That's a good thing, yeah.
Yeah. I have learned a lot about clouds right here.
That's as much as I could fit in 10 minutes.
Get in there. Well, awesome. Well, thank you. As always, I mean, this is what we get to do here with these segments too. You know, it's a little bit looser. Katie gets to tell us about things, and then, of course, if you have questions, feel free to write those in as well. and let us know.
Yep,
and
I have a calendar started for May. Every time I get a email or a comment on the post that I put on Facebook, I write it down and I'm starting to accumulate stuff to do with you folks.
All right, and yeah, so let us know what those are. And thanks everybody for joining. So this is Fox 12 Now. We live stream here from the Fox 12 Oregon, as we always do, every weekday starting at 1, but also now 11 o'clock as well. We've got more going on, and so plenty of stuff for you, and feel free to send in a message and share this show. I suggest downloading the Fox 12 Oregon app and the Fox 12 Weather app, both of those apps, and that way you can live stream here and find out everything else that is going on as well. But I think that's it for this one.
Yep.
Katie,
Yep.
thank you. This is always awesome, and I've learned more about clouds.
There you go.
Yeah, so Samuel Cumulus, not a real person.
No, no.
Okay.